All right. Welcome to the Local Energy Podcast. My name is Peter Brecht. I'm here with my co host, Wade Spear. And our guest today, I'm excited to introduce Boone Niederhofer. Boone is an Olympic athlete. He is a oil and gas guy out in Midland, Texas. When I sent him an email asking if he'd come on and talk with us, I was overjoyed when he responded with a yes. So, Boone, thank you for coming on. How's your day going?
It's going good. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Excited to talk a little bit of bobsled and oil and gas.
Yeah. Absolutely. Two things that we normally wouldn't think of going together, but they worked out really well. Now,
Yeah.
before we get into anything else, a question that we ask all of our guests when they join is, did we land on the moon?
I mean, yeah, I think.
Wade's on one side of that. I'm on the other. I'll let you decide who's who. So, Boone, this is kind of how I learned about your story during the Winter Olympics. Go on Twitter. Oil and gas Twitter is a very active group of very vocal people. Strong opinions, loosely held, maybe not so loosely held, but they're all saying, "Hey, this guy is from Midland. He's on the bobsled team. I think you're a pusher, if my research is
Yeah.
correct." So
Mhm.
different. I think it's four men on a bobsled. I'm imagining you're the guy that sits in the back. I don't know. We'll get into those details.
Yeah.
So I did my research and I'm like, look at man, like your profile photo on LinkedIn is like you're wearing this bobsled suit, and man, like I'm still working on my before photos, right? I haven't quite gotten to the after body, but
Yeah.
like I kind of want to start off like what is the training regimen for being a bobsledder, because that's really the thing that's holding us all back is the training for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so back up, most bobsledders are some form of transfer athlete, whether they ran track in college, played football, or did whatever sport. Most coming from track and field, transferring to bobsled. But I played football at Texas A&M, and I I feel like people can imagine what guys train for football, a lot of squats, a lot of power cleans. It's pretty similar for bobsled. We're just not really training anything laterally. Everything's very linear because, we don't run sideways, we run straight. And
Yeah.
so, and then on top of that, in a bobsled competition, my job is I push the sled for about 5 seconds and then I hop in and then I ride down, putting my trust into the driver. So one we kind of so and we also kind of say bobsled athletes are built in the summer, so we front load a lot of our training. The early part of the off season is big, kind of build strength, kind of build because bobsledders have to be heavy, build that strength early on in the off season, and then as the off season progresses, you get more into kind of shorter rep schemes, longer high end sprint training. And so then by the time we're getting ready for competition, everything we're doing is very short, very quick. Uh, so during the season, I do 2 to 3 reps on each set, and some sprints to kind of keep those fast twitch muscle fibers going, and then training to push a sled for 5 seconds.
5 seconds. What's the distance that I mean, it's like I've watched these, but you don't really quantify like the distance that you're going, right? So just out of my own curiosity, like how far are you running? Is it like, I don't know,
Yeah,
50 feet or less?
and about by the so you got to be in and down in the sled by about the 50-meter mark. We're probably loading into the sled at about 30, 35 meters.
Got it. Okay. And then then you have the driver in the front, right? And then you have two other guys by, like, what's the purpose of the two guys in the middle? Is it just tradition or weight, or like what is that? What's everyone's role?
So, there's for the men's side, there's 2-man and 4-man bobsled, and on the women's side, there's mono bob and 2 woman. So for the 4-man, it's just kind of, it's just where you end up sitting into the sled. The driver always sits in the front. It's the same driver for 2-man and 4-man. Kind of how it works in the regular season. You have your 4-man team, and then whoever does 2-man kind of rotates week to week to keep everybody relatively fresh.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so you have a driver in the front, 2 side guys, we call them, pushing on the sidebar. They'll load from the side of the sled and jump in. And then the guy who's in the back is the brakeman. I was a right side guy sitting third in the sled. And all of our job is to push the sled as hard as we can. And then we'll all load in the sled. The driver drives down the track. And then the guy in the back, after you cross the finish line, there's a braking stretch. He'll pull the brakes to bring us to a stop.
Gotcha. Okay, so there's the dynamics of the bobsled stuff. My experience with bobsled. So obviously, I hope you've seen Cool Runnings, but I watched that rally
Yes.
when I was like 10 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And then BMW. So my family goes back into the car dealership world and cars and all that, like BMW,
Yeah.
Mercedes. and BMW was always a huge sponsor of bobsleds and luge and all that other stuff. So, I'd always see the logo, and that kind of drew me into watching it. So I think
Yeah.
marketing works when you have that affinity. But
Yeah.
like,
BMW even built some bobsleds in that kind of 2012 to 2018 timeframe for USA bobsled.
okay, cool. I did not know that. That's
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, good to. I'll file that away. But that's very that's cool info. I mean, I don't know. There's no engine for it, but I'm sure the aerodynamics and all that other stuff makes a huge difference.
Yes.
So, how did you? So, I mean, you went to, you didn't, you weren't a, you were a football player, right? And went to Texas A&M. How did you, to kind of, I guess, kind of back this up a little bit? Uh, got into oil and gas, and then how did you end up getting into bobsledding? Like, what was that like? How do you make that connection? I guess that's what I'm trying
Yeah.
to fill in here.
Yeah. So, coming out of high school, I kind of knew two things. I knew I wanted to do some kind of engineering, and I knew I wanted to play football. My one scholarship offer out of high school was to Abilene Christian University in Abilene, Texas, which is where my dad and my brother both played football. And, I just kind of had a dream of wanting to play Division I football, high level. And, I had gotten accepted to A&M, and, at that time, me and my dad were just sending my film out to whatever email that universities had on their website, just seeing if anybody would respond. And somebody from Texas A&M responded and let me kind of come see a practice and let me come to campus. And then, because I was already accepted to the school, it was pretty easy for them to say, yeah, sure, you can come walk on. So I started to walk on at A&M, and, you know, also step back, ACU also did not really have an engineering program. And so when I got the opportunity to go to A&M, it was all signs for me were pointing towards A&M. It just seemed like from an academic perspective and a sport perspective, it made sense for me to want to go there. I also had an uncle who he graduated from A&M in '82 with a petroleum engineering degree. And when I was a freshman in college, it was 2012, and then by the time I was picking a degree in 2014, oil was, over $100 a barrel. And it seemed like, yeah, I should probably pick petroleum engineering. On top of that, I saw what my uncle did. It seemed like he had a pretty cool job. But then it was interesting. By the time I graduated in 2016, the job placement was the percentage was the lowest it had ever been at A&M since like the '80s. So
Yep.
obviously a very cyclical industry we're in. But so yeah, so then after I graduated, had a job with a company called Wild Horse Resources. We were in Houston, had some Eastern Eagleford acreage, kind of in the area, Washington County, Burleson County area, Brenham and Caldwell, Texas area. Worked there as a completion engineer for about a year and a half. Then we were bought by Chesapeake in 2019. And then at that time, 2019, oil was at like $45 a barrel. I was job searching. Not many people were hiring. I myself was kind of in an awkward stage in my career, having worked for about a year and a half. Wasn't really quite a new hire. Wasn't really a 3-year guy either. And so there weren't that many opportunities out there for me. I job searched for a few months and was unsuccessful. Had a buddy of mine who I played football with at A&M. Similar situation to me where he went to work out of school. He actually had an aunt and uncle who just were randomly big winter sport fans and kind of kept poking him like, dude, we think you'd be a really good bobsledder. And he's like, what? So he basically went to a bobsled tryout to get them to shut up about it, and ended up loving it, kind of kept getting invited back to things, did really well. And then about a year later, after he had gotten into the sport, I was kind of we were just catching up on the phone one day, and I was telling him about my job, and he was like, dude, if you're not working right now, you should come try out. And, you know,
That's
I
awesome.
was, the job search was going well, put the job search on hold, and kind of
Yeah.
went all in on bobsled for a few years.
I love that. That is like, I kind of like how you mentioned that bobsledding is like a sidestep, right? Like, I don't know, and I'm sure there's people that train, especially in other countries, perhaps for that event. It's probably less common here in the States, I'd imagine. But that's so on your team. Let's kind of, is it it's a 4-man team, or do you guys have like an extra? Is there like a, we always talk about like the ninth man, right? But like,
Yeah.
is there another guy that is training just in case, or kind of talk me through the dynamics of the team a little bit and the training?
Yeah. So There's usually about 25 guys that come out for push championships at the beginning of the year. For the push athletes, that's kind of the big event to make the World Cup team. They pare it down to it's usually 11 push athletes, 11 or 12 push athletes that they'll name to the national team. There usually is 3 four-man teams on the national team and then 2 or 3 alternates. And so we'll kind of go through our regular season, which is the World Cup circuit. And generally, we have teams kind of training together through the off season. You kind of have an idea of who's going to be racing with who going into the season. But then once the regular season hits, if your team is not pushing in the top, 5 to 6 teams in a race, you're probably going to, usually the low man on the totem pole is going to get swapped out to see if there's another guy who can push faster or contribute more to the sled than that one guy did. And so the regular season almost sometimes will turn into a process of finding the best four-man team leading up into the Olympics. And then on top of that, it's kind of a fight to qualify a certain number of teams. Usually, the U.S. will usually qualify 2 or 3 sleds, usually at least 2. We qualified 3 in 2018 and then 2 teams in the last 2 Olympics. So then from paring it down from the World Cup team, usually 6 push athletes, 6 or 9 push athletes make the Olympic team, obviously with 2 or, with drivers on those four-man teams. And so going from 12 to 6 push athletes on the World Cup team, it's very competitive.
No kidding.
And I think the big question I'd have is, I mean, at one point in my career, I went back to school to get my engineering degree while I was doing geosteering and working full time. Like, how in the world did you balance, training for world-class competition and like being an engineer as well?
Yeah. Well, so, so kind of the next step in my bobsled career. Yeah. So I competed full time for 3 years from 2019 through 2022. Did not end up making the Olympics in 2022. And after that year, wife and I, we decided I needed to get a real job for a little bit. You don't make any money doing bobsled. And so I started job searching, ended up getting a job with Pioneer here in Midland. We moved to Midland in summer of 22, came on as a production engineer. Got to work there for about 2 years, and kind of got the itch to want to do bobsled again, and went through the process of asking my bosses if they would allow me to do it, and basically got a hard no. And
Kidding.
so I started job searching at that point. It just was kind of upfront in the interviews I was doing, and just kind of like, hey, like, I'm a bobsledder, kind of have a dream of wanting to pursue it again. Like, is this something you'd even be open to? Got a lot of, man, that's really cool, but we won't be able to support that. And then finally got one yes with a company called Civitas Resources. I don't know if any other company would have said yes, because when they said yes, I was like, all right, done deal, let's do it.
Yeah.
And they allowed me to work remotely when I needed to be gone for a competition and races and things like that. And then when I was here in Midland, I'd go into the office and things like that. We kind of had the hybrid schedule worked in, and so we had all the technology, equipment, things in place for me to work remotely whenever I needed to be gone. So it was a good situation. And then kind of back to your question, how did I handle training and working and all this? Even just going back to A&M when I was a football player doing my engineering degree, it kind of just became like what I did. When I started my first job right out of school, I was getting to the office at like 6:30 and usually leaving at 5:30 or 6. And I do remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I have so much free time, even though I was working long days.
Yeah.
And so, it just kind of became something that I became used to. And then now kind of fast forward to this season of my life where I'm working and training and now being a dad. I think that season of my life kind of prepared me for what I'm doing now.
There's I love the like, I work with a lot of athletes, right? So most of my team is athletes, and I think that we all in some fashion competed at a higher level and never went to the Olympics myself, right? But having done what I love to do all the way through college, and then but there's something to be said about I think that athletic mindset, right? So if I had an athlete come to me and say, "Hey, look, I'm training for this event. I can still work full time or I can work part time." Like as long as we're
Yeah.
open about like, I love talking to those
Yep.
people. Like, and the other part too is a lot of professional athletes, they get to a certain level of their career and then they kind of go like, man, I can't play this anymore, or I can't make enough money. I need to go do other things.
Yeah.
There's that second career transition that's really difficult. And I don't know, I just admire companies that will, I think, help that bridge, because
Yeah.
athletes are great. They have a great hardworking mindset. A lot of them, I mean, a lot of people I talk to that are athletes, like they have their MBA, they've done, they're picking up everything they can. So, anyways, I kind of realized it's a pattern, and I love seeing
Yeah.
that, and it's cool. I'm really glad Civitas was open to that, and man, whoever the hiring manager is, they deserve a good
Yeah.
star, because that's just
Oh yeah.
it's the right mentality.
Yeah, it was amazing. I'm so glad that they gave me the opportunity. But also, I mean, I kind of with the time that I kind of built in with Pioneer, it made me a very hireable person and gave me some good experience leading into that job.
Yeah,
I had to kind of get good at my job before I could say, hey, can I also go do this other thing?
yeah, you earned
Because
by all
if
means,
I
you earned it. Yeah.
if I, was kind of learning how to do my job and then trying to do this at the same time, it probably wouldn't have worked.
Right. Yeah, no, totally. You put the time in, I mean, it shows, right? And you can kind of tell when you're talking to someone where that's at. So, and are you still with Civitas now?
So yeah, Civitas merged with SM Energy earlier this year,
Okay.
which was also just kind of interesting. I was actually in Europe when the deal was announced, and I was kind of like, well, if SM is not about the bobsled thing, I don't know what to do.
No kidding. Oh my goodness.
If they tell me to come home, I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
I'll see you in a couple months.
Right, man. Did your family get to travel with you and be part of that whole kind of that event as well, or?
Yeah, thankfully they did.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to spend a couple months over in Europe this past year for the World Cup tour and then for the Olympics, which was a huge blessing. And honestly, the opportunity to potentially get to see my babies kind of live through this was a huge motivating factor for me in my training, and still kind of can't believe we got to do it.
There is something, having your kids around. I like that's like my like I changed careers for that, right? It was, we've all done the jobs that are a lot of work, a lot of hours, but if we have an
Hmm.
opportunity to have our kids with us for those events, it's huge.
Yeah, yeah. Even if you have something going on, even just showing your kids like, hey, don't let this other thing dissuade you from pursuing something that you really want to do on the side.
Totally. Yeah, and it's a great story as you continue to, develop them and be a dad. I think that's awesome. So
Mhm.
I'm assuming you're with SM, and again, pardon
Mhm.
me for not doing my research on like where you're at now, but bring us up to speed on you today.
Yeah. So working for SM Energy still as a production engineer, and now this will be my just completed my 4th year as a production engineer here in the Midland Basin, mostly kind of Glasscock County, Martin County, Howard County area. Where obviously have a now that we're SM and Civitas combined, we're now a pretty large company. Have a big acreage position here in the Permian Basin. Bring wells online, a lot of ESP wells, and then the decision on as wells go through their life cycle. Do we go ESP, rod pump, those kind of decisions, and then ride and workover procedures, tracking LOE, things like that. It's been a fun job.
The more you learn about the oil and gas industry, the more amazing it becomes. Now, what you just listed there, it sounds like you're managing a lot of different pieces of it, or are you managing a specific portion of that process as a production engineer?
So we're my job at least, everything from the end of the frac, and then everything basically until the facility is kind of where I'm living. So anything downhole, I'll make the decision on, and then usually helping with the facilities engineers designing on, how much liquid will this facility to handle, how much gas, looking at forecasts for new wells coming online, whether it's to a new facility or an existing battery. And then, yeah, that's a big part of the job, just picking artificial lift type and then making sure that they're producing the way that they should, going going through optimization meetings, have a good relationship with the production foreman out there in the field and the pumpers. And, we have a group message. We're talking constantly. They're kind of the eyes in the field. And then, we'll kind of group up, every day and kind of make decisions on, what we need to do with wells, all different types of artificial lift we have. We have ESP, gas lift, plunger lift, gas assisted plunger, and then obviously rod pump. So we're optimizing a lot of things, looking at a lot of things, trying to keep track. And then especially with now the merging of the two companies, I have about 60% of my wells are Civitas wells, about 40% are now SM wells. So I'm learning a new area while also trying to keep track of what some of the wells I had been looking after. And then now kind of on a still trying to get integrated on new SCADA systems and things like that. So it's still a work in progress, but it's coming pretty smoothly.
Do you like it? It sounds like there's a lot of learning involved. Yes, you got your degree from Texas A&M,
Mhm.
and that's
Definitely.
foundational. But it sounds like there's still a lot of learning that's done on the job constantly. Is this something where, I don't know, as an outsider looking in, like I know in my job, like I'm always learning something, right? Like there's whether you have to go to another conference or you have to go, just even talking to people like yourself, where it's like information coming in that's helping inform maybe something that I'll do even a month from now. How are you keeping organized to like stay up on all this stuff? Because I mean, there's
Yeah.
maybe not major developments, but if you're going from basin to basin or even in different area, like that could be there could be a huge difference in
But
what you're
yeah,
looking at.
totally. Totally. And that's one thing that SM is really invested in is, trying to, I would say we'll kind of try to be a fast follow on emerging technologies. If there's papers that come out on, this new technology that, works in this certain environment, we'll be pretty quick to say, oh, let's at least go try it.
Cool.
So that part of my job has been interesting, getting to try different things, even stand mitigation tools on ESP, things like that. There's a conference every year in Lubbock, Texas that I got to go to, learned a little bit about jet pump. So may even try us in a, jet pump is not typically around here in the Midland Basin, but we may have an opportunity to try that too. So
Jet.
obviously not a new technology, but new to the Midland Basin.
Wait, I don't think we've talked about jet pumps, have we?
No, that's one that I'm not super familiar with. I mean, I'm not on the production side anyway, but
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So basically, personally, I'm still trying to learn about jet pump too. I've never actually run one, but so basically, you have a power fluid. It's kind of like gas lift, but you're injecting water, and there's a tool downhole or a nozzle downhole that shoots the water up the annulus. You're usually injecting down the tubing and producing up the annulus. You'll run in with slick tubing with a packer on the end, and then there's a a pump that you'll run down hole. Then you'll inject down the tubing. The nozzle will shoot the water up the annulus along with your produced fluids, and then on surface there's a few different types of pump you can use. Sometimes it's just an H pump on surface, and that pump is hooked up usually to your water tank or oil tank, whichever power fluid you want to use. And then there's a VFD skid along with your pump, and so your drive will control how fast you're pumping. And then from there, it's kind of like an ESP. You'll watch your pit, watch obviously your produced fluids just to make sure everything's producing the way that it should. But yeah, it's a fairly simple setup. You have a pump on surface and a nozzle down hole, and then you hook up your tank to your wellhead and start injecting down the well.
Okay. What I wonder why they chose water over something else. Like, is it just because of it must be
Usually oil,
there's-
usually oil is a little bit better just because it's lighter, but it kind of just creates the nozzle basically just kind of shoots the water
Hmm.
back up and helps kind of create some momentum to bring it up the well.
Okay. Interesting. Would you choose to use, like, in what situations would this make the most sense? Like, if this sounds like you're kind of more towards end of life, right? Like, almost like we're almost going to, I don't know, like we're almost done with this
Yeah.
well. We're going to start putting water in it. I don't know.
It depends. It's really good for high corrosive environments. For the situation that I may run one on, this well is just making a ton of sand, and we've tried running a couple ESPs, and we're having some issues with it. Some sand mitigation tools are not fixing our problem, and so we're like, something that spins probably is not going to handle this sand very well. So the jet pump handles solids very well, handles H2S well. Obviously you can pump with your water, oil, whatever your power fluid is. You can have chemical pumped in there so that you're constantly treating your tubing and your casing. If you are seeing H2S, jet pump is run a lot more on the Delaware Basin side, at least in our area, because of the H2S issues that they've seen there. And I'm pretty sure in South Texas there's some jet pump because of the H2S issues, but that is one of the main reasons you would run jet pump is because of the H2S. If you're seeing, crazy high amounts, you're going to want to effectively treat that versus an ESP where you may have capturing and hull where you're injecting chemical, but you may need just a massive amount of chemical to treat that much H2S. And so for that reason, jet pump would be really good. And then because there's not much H2S on the Midland Basin side, really sand solids issues that you might be seeing on rod pump or ESP would be a reason to go jet pump.
And I've told this to Wade before, but like if there's one thing, I think the reason that I'm interested in artificial lift, like if you said right now you got to go pick a direction and go do something in oil and gas like on the field, I would say it's going to be an artificial lift or wireline. And because I've had such like deep conversations on both with people, just because it's it's just interesting to me, right? The use cases and why, and kind of determining, and it's pretty amazing that they're still coming up with new ways to get the hydrocarbons out. It's like it's fascinating to me, and then the thought process too that goes into like consulting on something like that, where like, hey, I've got this well, this is where it's located, this is what it's giving me. What should we do here, right? And then coming up with a solution is pretty impressive. So
yeah,
it's always changing.
and then even something that does well in one basin may not do well in another. So
Exactly.
it's learning in all different types of scenarios.
Yeah, it's intriguing. Now, would you say that like if you had to pick one thing out of your role, like what's the most interesting thing or thing that you enjoy doing the most?
I would say probably workover,
Okay.
because that involves choosing types of artificial lift, installing even just the initial artificial lift install on a new well is kind of exciting. You get to bring a new well online.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then even just obviously sometimes you'll open a can of worms, you turn into a fishing job, which is not obviously fun for a company, but it's always interesting to try to figure out problems.
Okay. Yeah. I I think that would be. I can tell like Wade's gonna like probably about a year from now. Wade's gonna move over from drilling to production just because he's gonna be asking all the questions. I'm
Yeah, I
kidding.
did it for about 6 months, and I really, really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Cool. So, it like just curious, like this is more of a timely topic here, but we're recording this on May 27th. We're working on getting these episodes out quicker. But what's activity been out in Midland? And from the few people I've talked to, it's like it's hot and cold. Like some people are on fire and some people aren't. Those are some of the service companies, at least.
Mhm.
But what's the activity been like?
Obviously with oil prices where they are, I feel like companies have tried to stay level and say that, we're going to keep our drilling frac schedule consistent through the end of the year. I would say smaller companies are probably saying, "Oh, let's take advantage of this." They're a little bit more nimble. I would say we've stayed fairly consistent with our drill and frac schedule, but on the production side, if we see kind of a uplift opportunity that we think is economic, which obviously in this price environment, most everything's going to be economic. So if you see an opportunity, go ahead and go do it. So it's picked up on my side. I'm not as in tune with the drill and frac fleets in the Midland Basin, but I would assume that activity is pretty high. And obviously with who knows what oil prices are going to be tomorrow, but for now, we're in a good environment.
Yeah. I'm going to take a stab at something here, but most of the conversations I've had with other folks is like, at least in the early phases of this, is that they were taking the higher oil prices to kind of renovate, do more workovers, right? So that was the whole idea, is like, let's try to get everything up to speed so that,
Yeah.
let's say this is just a quick spike, we can, keep producing, at a proper level, right? And so, is it common? I guess the answer can come from either you or Wade, but is it common for that to kind of be the cycle where it's like, let's get the workovers done, get the maintenance up to speed, and then after that, if it's sustained, we can get into the drilling, newer things and kind of discovering new holes and opportunities? Or how is that typical?
I would say, yeah. I would say the change happens, immediately at the wellhead is probably where the most change happens, and then the farther you get away is as will be the more like, okay, we're seeing a consistent price here. Let's go ahead and adjust some of our hedges and things like that before we make a decision on, let's usually the like $30,000-$40,000 decisions changed first, and then the $7 million decisions get changed later.
Yeah. So, and kind of moving here towards, we've been talking for a while, but I'm curious if, you graduate Texas A&M and you're standing there with your diploma, what something that you would tell your younger self a couple years ago that, like, be ready for this, or kind of in preparation for, like, what's something you didn't expect, that you
Mm.
wish you'd known then, or would share?
Yeah, I would say just be open to new opportunities. Don't be afraid to make connections with people. Being kind of an engineer mind, I would probably classify myself as a little bit of a shyer person. Usually, I would say I'm not the most talkative person, and so I'm not always out to try and meet new people, things like that. And as I've kind of grown in that, I've seen the importance of making connections. Some of the connections I had made leading up to my job at Civitas may not have happened if I didn't make some connections earlier. So I'd say, obviously you want these connections to be natural. You don't just want to go sending random messages out to everybody on LinkedIn just to make a connection.
Right.
But, the people you do meet in the industry, you can create meaningful connections with people, and even just as a Christian, I want to make an impact on people. I want, to spread the love of Jesus to everybody that I meet, and trying to do that in a authentic and meaningful way is how I usually try to live my life.
I love it, man. That's the perfect answer, right? Building your network before you need it, right? And being genuine about it. And then I can't tell you how many people have come on the podcast and just talked about their faith and how important that is. And that, for me personally, like, that's kind of a guiding factor in everything too, is, yeah. So I love your foundation. I love where you're at. Are you planning on training for any other bobsled events in the near future? Or are you playing football,
We're
man? Like, just for
Yeah.
fun? Or
Still trying to figure that out. With my two babies, I have a 3.5-year-old and a 1-year-old.
yeah.
And in 2030, my daughter will be 7, which, she'll be in first grade, things like that. As far as pursuing another Olympics, that'll take some more conversation. But I'm gonna stay in shape, and we'll see what happens.
I love it, man. That's great. This is the best time of life for your kids and just being around them. I mean, like, I'm so glad
Yeah.
you get to embrace them and be around it. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
anyways,
they may not remember everything
yeah,
from this last year, but they'll at least have the pictures, and we'll get to tell them the stories, and it's amazing to get to travel with them.
100%, man. Well, guys, we're gonna, if you want to connect with Boone, we'll have a couple links below. If you want to follow his story, there's some other great interviews out there with him and Boone. Just go out, be a great dad, go do the petroleum thing, man, and just and keep at it. We'll be watching.
Yeah, I appreciate it, y'all. Thanks for having me on. This is fun.
All right.
Thanks for sharing your
Take care,
story,
guys.
man.
Thanks, Wade. Thanks, Peter.
All right, guys, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you for listening to Local Energy, and we'll be back again next week. Thanks.